Some of you are going to call me crazy when we get to the end of this video, but I'll explain why when we get there. It's time for my updated college football playoff predictions as we head into Week 10. Technically, I guess Week 10's already started, but as we head into the Saturday games, the main slate of games for Week 10. And I don't think people realize how crazy this is going to be, and I talked about this the other day. It's opposite of the craziness that we thought we were getting. We thought we were getting craziness with all these upsets, but now it looks like we're going to have a bunch of teams at the top with one or two losses or undefeated. And I'm telling you, I think we could see a one-loss Power 4 team left out of the college football playoff. I really do. And I think we could see multiple two-loss teams left out of the playoff. We could have multiple one-loss teams, actually. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Unless we see some upsets here in the final month of the season, we're going to have a lot of teams, several teams potentially, that have a great case to make the playoff that are going to get left out because there's only 12 spots. This is going to be interesting here in the first year of a 12-team playoff. So let's get to the predictions. We'll start with the conference champions, the automatic qualifiers here. My number one seed has changed. I'm now going with the Oregon Ducks. I believe Oregon will go undefeated, and I believe that they will win the Big Ten championship. I have had Ohio State in this spot, but I think Ohio State actually loses a second game. The way that their offensive line is struggling right now with the injuries, I think they have a big problem, and I think there's a good chance they lose to Penn State on Saturday on the road. So I don't think Ohio State's even going to be in that game. We might see Oregon, Penn State in the Big Ten championship, and I think that's going to go to Oregon. So I've got them as the 1 seed. 2 seed for me is Georgia. I think they're going to win out. I think they're going to win the SEC championship. I've got them playing Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is able to get there with just one loss in the conference. I think they'll probably slip up, lose one of these final games. Maybe it's on the road at South Carolina, on the road at Auburn even, or maybe it's the game to Texas. But I think Texas A&M gets there, and we see the Aggies and the Bulldogs, but I'm going with Georgia to win the SEC championship. 3 seed for me is still Miami. I haven't made a change here. I think they're going to go undefeated, though. I think they'll win the ACC. They'll face an 11-1 Clemson team, an undefeated conference season for Clemson. But, yeah, Miami-Clemson in the ACC championship. I'm going with Miami to win that game. And then finally we have Kansas State. Actually, we have one more automatic qualifier. But I got Kansas State winning the Big 12. I know everybody likes BYU. They like Iowa State. I think Kansas State's able to get there with just the one loss. They win the Big 12 championship. They play Iowa State, so if they win that game, they will have the tiebreaker there. So going with the Wildcats, and then the final automatic qualifier is actually Boise State. I've still got them at 12. If they win out, I think that they're a lock. Unless Army beats Notre Dame and Army goes undefeated, then then we're probably talking about Army in this spot. But I don't really see that happening. So I'm going with Boise State. I think they win out. They win the Mountain West, and they get in at number 12. All right, so as far as these bowls go, you would think that the Peach Bowl would be up there where Georgia is. We'd switch the Peach Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. But all the projections I've seen have had Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. According to my research, there are no more tie-ins with these bowl games. Like, you don't have to have an SEC team in the Sugar Bowl unless maybe I missed something there. So I don't know why that is, but I'm just kind of going along with other projections that I've seen. And so, again, Georgia, Sugar Bowl, Peach Bowl for Miami. And, again, Rose Bowl for the Big Ten team, plus Oregon's out west, so that makes sense. All right, so let's go to the at-large teams now. We'll start with number 5. I've got Penn State. I think there's a good chance they finish 12-0, but then lose to Oregon in the Big Ten championship. Even if they have a loss in the regular season, they still have a chance to be 5th. So I'm going with the Nittany Lions there at 5. 6th place, I'm going with Clemson. I think Clemson has the one loss to Georgia, and then they lose to Miami in the ACC championship. You're talking about losing to 2 playoff teams, the number 2 and 3 seeds in the college football playoff. So yeah, that's not going to hurt them too much. They'll have a win over Pitt. Now Pitt could actually wind up at 11-1 and be left out of this thing. Again, Virginia Tech's having a pretty good year. That'll be a decent win. So I think Clemson has enough wins with 2 really good losses that they come in at number 6. Number 7 is Tennessee. I think Tennessee gets in at 10-2, losing to Georgia. So that's, again, not a bad loss at all to the best team in the SEC. The Arkansas loss does hurt, but I don't think that's a bad loss. I think Arkansas has proven they're a pretty good team. And you got the big win over Alabama. Seemed like there was another game that they'd have on the resume. I can't remember now who that would be. But Tennessee at number 7. Number 8, Ohio State. So I've still got the Buckeyes getting in here. I've got them losing to probably Oregon and Penn State. So the top 2 teams in the Big Ten. 2 teams that maybe go 12-0. So they're not going to get penalized for those losses. And then they'd have the big win over Indiana. I've got Indiana at 11-1. So the Hoosiers have a great season. That's going to be the key win for Ohio State to get them in at number 8. And then we got Notre Dame at number 9. I just don't know if they lose another game this season. When you look at their schedule, the only possibility is maybe USC, but USC's not playing great. So I think Notre Dame gets there at 11-1. Not a strong resume, but the Texas A&M win is going to be the difference. That's going to be what gets them into the playoff. Number 10, BYU. I'm looking at BYU now as a team that could go 12-0. Finish undefeated in the regular season, then lose to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship. But an undefeated regular season should be enough to get them in. And then our final playoff team is Indiana. So Indiana at 11-1. The only loss coming to Ohio State, and have some decent wins there on the resume. But I don't know. I mean, they wouldn't have a lot of quality wins. It'd really just be the fact that they only have one loss. Other teams that could be fighting for this spot: an 11-1 Iowa State, an 11-1 SMU, an 11-1 Pittsburgh potentially, a 10-2 LSU, a 10-2 or let's say a 10-3 Texas A&M team with that third loss coming in the SEC championship. There are a lot of teams that could make a real case, a real argument to get into the college football playoff. I really want to see the first playoff rankings, and once I see that and I kind of get a gauge on what this committee is looking for this year, then I'll feel a little bit better about who would get in the scenario that I'm laying out. But like I said, I mean, I named what? Potentially SMU, Pittsburgh, Iowa State, potentially 3 one-loss Power 4 teams. Like, that would be crazy to see those teams left out. But that's kind of the way it's starting to look. Maybe all 3 of those teams don't go 11-1, but maybe 1 or 2 of them does, and that team gets left out. And again, we're talking about a 1-loss BYU team, a 1-loss Indiana team, a 1-loss Notre Dame team. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Something's got. I mean, we've got to see upsets, right? Because I don't think we've ever seen a season with that many 1-loss teams. So I don't know how it's going to go, but we might see some changes to this very, very soon if the upsets start happening again. The pressure starts to build for these teams. So let's go to the games now. Ohio State, Notre Dame. I think not playing in the Big Ten championship game is going to help Ohio State have a little time to recover with some of their injuries potentially. I don't know what the offensive line is going to look like at this point, but with the injury to Simmons, you've got some time to have these guys gel together and improve. And I think Ohio State will be playing actually better football when we get to the playoff than they are right now. And I think they win this game at home against Notre Dame. Penn State, Boise State, boy, I was really close to pulling the trigger on the upset here, but I'm going to stick with Penn State. I just think they're too physical in the trenches. They get the win. And again, we're not going to spend much time on these games because they're just hypothetical matchups. Tennessee, BYU, I think Tennessee, too much for this BYU team. The Vols will advance. And then we see Clemson, Indiana. I'm going to pick one big upset here. Indiana shocks Clemson. I do believe this Indiana team is really, really good. And I think they get the win here on the road in Death Valley. They pull off the big upset and advance. So then we got Oregon, Ohio State. If they played again this week, I'd pick Oregon, no doubt about it. But like I said, I think Ohio State will have some time once they get to the end of the season for this offensive line to come together, make some improvements. They still got a ton of talent. Will Howard's a playmaker at quarterback in the Rose Bowl. I've got Ohio State getting revenge over Oregon. Then we've got Penn State, Kansas State. Gonna go with the Nittany Lions here, and you could call it the Ohio State Revenge Tour, potentially playing Oregon and then Penn State, the 2 teams that beat them in the regular season based off of my predictions. So we'll get to that in a second. But Georgia, Tennessee for the second time. I think Georgia wins it again. Miami, too much for Indiana. Cam Ward makes too many plays. Hurricanes win here. And again, the Ohio State Revenge Tour continues the win over Penn State. Again, I just think this team will be playing better football at this point. And then we get Georgia, Miami. Bulldogs win this one. So again, we talk about the revenge tour. Ohio State with a chance to get some revenge on Georgia from a few years ago. Look, right now, Ohio State does not look like the best team, but they were my preseason pick to win a national championship. I have not gone back on that prediction all year, and so I'm not going to do it just yet. I want to see what they look like against Penn State then perhaps next week you're going to see me pull the trigger and not put Ohio State in the national championship, or not have them win the national championship, because I think there are some real concerns there. I don't want to overreact too much again to the Nebraska game, so we'll see. We'll see. But if I don't like what I see against Penn State, Ohio State, I'm not going to have them winning the national championship. But for now, I'm going to stick with that. And I get it. That sounds crazy the way they looked last week. But for now, I'm going to stick with that. You know, I made the mistake. I went in the Georgia-Texas matchup in the playoff. I changed, or when I was projecting ahead, I changed my prediction to Texas instead of Georgia to advance to the national championship. And then we saw the very next week Georgia beat Texas, and I had to change my pick. So I don't want to be going back and forth on these picks too much. I'm going with Ohio State. And how fitting would it be for them to come all the way from the 8 seed when in the very first 4-team playoff they came all the way from the 4 seed? That would be quite interesting. They've got to prove it this week, though. I know what you guys are going to say, but I'm sticking with it for now. But they got to prove it this week, and if they don't look the way that I think they're capable of looking this weekend, then I think next week on my video you're going to see a new prediction here and a new team I'm going to have winning the national championship. We'd love to get your thoughts on the playoffs and who you think is going to win it all. Give me your predictions down in the comments below.